So if you want to go from this to this, easy, let's do it. So step one is extra hair strands. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting the base color of the hair and just drawing a wispy hair strand just like that. And then step two of this step one is select a darker color and just kind of outline it like that. And that's basically it. You're just going to do a lot of these hair strands in places that you think need a little bit more depth. And the important thing to remember is you want to make sure that this layer is above the line art layer and the color layer. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit just because it's kind of the same step repeated. But basically after that, the before will be like this and after like this. Yep, very nice. Okay, step two is lighting. So I'm literally so lazy when it comes to lighting, but basically I just pick a white color and then with the lasso tool color fill freehand option, I'm just doing these squiggly lines around the edge of my character. I don't even know if these shapes are correct in terms of lighting logic, but I just do these sharp, jagged lines that make it look like I know what I'm doing in terms of lighting and hoping it turns out all right. So you can see I'm just doing these random jagged lines. And then after you are finished your arbitrary jagged lines, you can go in with the smudge tool and just kind of smudge out the edges a little bit. But if you're like me and you're kind of lazy, I also just use the motion blur tool where you can basically just toggle how much motion blur you want. So I don't like going too intense. I still like it when there's still some jagged shape in there. And then you can adjust the opacity to how much you like it in terms of intensity. And then again, play with the smudge tool a little bit if you want it to look a little less intense. So the before and the after is now like this. And then step three are shadows. So for shadows, I like using a dark red color, kind of like that, on multiply layer on a new layer. And then this is kind of when I go in and do these small little creases, just doing little, what do I call these shapes? Like little blob shapes to kind of add more depth to the clothing or the skin area, mainly the clothing, I think. It just, I don't know, it adds a little bit more extra detail that you don't think anyone would notice, but then when you add it, it's like, ooh. And then you can just change the opacity to how much you like it. And then this next part that I'm doing is I'm just adding shadow to the hand that's in front of him to make it kind of cast a shadow on his face. And I guess shadows are kind of hard to explain because they do vary between characters and what pose they're doing. So I'll try and add a few more examples after this. But basically I'm filling in his hand with the same dark red color on multiply layer and then moving it to where approximately I think the shadow should go. I think my light source is coming from the right. I honestly did not establish this while I was drawing, so I'm kind of establishing it now. So that is where I'm putting my shadow, but then I'm lowering the opacity, putting it on motion blur, and then kind of smudging it to make it fit in with the rest of the piece more. And then so here's the before and after of the shadows. And here are some more examples. Again, I should make a quick disclaimer that I have never taken classes or lessons as to how or where shadows should truly be. Like, I have no shadow logic. But one tip that I found really helpful is if, say you want to accentuate your character's face, you would put less shadow on their face and more maybe on their clothes or surrounding them so that their face appears brighter, you know, like less in the shadow, so that your audience's eyes go straight to the face where you want them to look. And another tip is if I kind of am lazy with line art or I think this part of the clothing looks a little bit weird, I just bombard it with shadow to make it really dark so no one really looks there, and then I just call it a day. Step four is color dodge. So color dodge is a fun one. This is when you can pick any color that you like. I just chose red. I turned the layer to color dodge, and then with a large airbrush, you can just swipe over any part of your character and it creates just this really cool layering color thing. So that's why I really like color dodge, is it just makes you look like you know what you're doing with color theory. Maybe you do, but I don't. So that's maybe why I like this step. So here is the before and after of color dodge. And step 5 is fun stuff. So I don't really know what to call the step, but it's when I take a white brush and I just kind of do these circular dot-like things to kind of look like flying dust. I just think it adds some cool depth and atmosphere for a character piece. And I just turn it on Gaussian blur so it doesn't look too harsh. And the next step, I realized I had this layer on in all my previous steps, so I'm just kind of doing it on top. But what I had is kind of this semicircle gray layer underneath my character to kind of cast a shadow. Like, I'm just kind of too lazy to do real backgrounds, so I just call this a background, just like a gray gradient. And then the last step after you merged all your layers together is when you can use chromatic aberration. So this one's just a fun one to kind of play around with perspective, or if you just want it to be displaced, so you can kind of move it around like that. I normally like it for character pieces. There's not too much chromatic aberration on the face, just because I want that to be my focus point. So play around with this one. This one's really fun. I feel like it just makes your colors pop a little bit more. And that is basically all I do. So after chromatic aberration, I consider it finished. So I don't know why I sounded so unsure, but we went from this to that, and then to this, and then that, and then finally this. So every step put together, it doesn't seem like a lot, but now when we see it side by side, we can see that, you know, the finalization steps do add up, and it makes a character piece end up looking pretty cool. So thank you for watching till the end. Let me know what else I should do, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!